Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Yeah, the parking.
Yeah, she was.
She didn't get home till after midnight.
Oh,
That shit was so long.
Good morning, Madam Chair. It is 9 o'clock. We have a quorum and our applicants are here.
Excellent. All right, well then we shall begin. We'd like to welcome everyone to the January 27th, 2023 Landmarks Commission meeting. It's nice to see everyone, even though it continues to be virtually. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio Open Meeting Law and Section 101.021 of the Codified Ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rule of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from the vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you can keep your mic on mute. You use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you before you select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking that raised hand icon again and muting your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via the website and email have been considered. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. We'd like to call the January 26, 2023 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Morning, Madam Chair. Before I do roll, I just wanted to bring it to the Commission's attention that Ward 4 Councilmember Deborah Gray has been appointed to the Commission, so we'd like to welcome her, and we're very happy to have her on board. So with that, I'll start the roll call with Ms. Anderson, Mr. Benezzi,
Here.
Mr. Kalikia,
Here.
Mr. Dreyer,
Here.
Mr. Edmond, Councilmember Gray, Director Wong, Mr. Strickland,
Here.
Mr. Tarasek,
Here.
and Ms. Trott.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum. In addition to the commission members, we have Kevin Roberts, our representative from the Law Department, as well as Jessica Beam and Carl Bringes, and myself from Landmarks are all present.
Excellent.
Now, just to go over the rules and procedures for the virtual meetings. Each project is considered on a case-by-case basis. The chair will call each agenda item, and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation is concluded, the chair will ask Landmark staff to summarize design review committee recommendations and any public comments received. The deadline for public comments is noon on the Tuesday prior to any regularly scheduled Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting. Any received comments are distributed to the commission prior to the meeting. Staff will also identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item in which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff. The commission will then begin deliberations and project review. Any commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been called.
Excellent. Thank you for that summary. We will begin with our certificates of appropriateness. We'd like to call our first applicant forward. Please announce yourself and tell us about your project. The first applicant is located at 2011 West 25th Street, ATM installation and signage.
Morning. My name is Ben Gingrich. I'm with HSB Architects representing KeyBank today. I'm also joined by Bruce Danko of KeyBank. Our project includes a new ATM, walk-up ATM at the corner of 25th Street and Lorraine. It's in the alcove of this development here. And next page, please.
I can't get in.
The ATM is a walk-up unit, and it has a canopy over it. You can see from some of the site photos, the alcove that we're planning on tucking this canopy into. We're planning it to be about 30 inches off the building. That's intentional due to just making sure that the drainage doesn't conflict with the building itself. We don't want to be too close to the building. I know that was one of the comments from the previous session that we considered. Next slide, please. It's just some details showing exactly how we're mounting the unit. Next slide. And we've got some elevations here showing exactly what the kiosk looks like. The kiosk has two sides on it with an internally illuminated KeyBank logo and ATM up the left leg of it. It's got this arched canopy that comes over and sort of protects a user while they're using the ATM. Also has lighting in that canopy to provide good illumination and make sure that there's a safe environment around the walk-up ATM. Additionally, we've got a wall sign here, which we'll show an image of in a moment. That's going to be on the masonry next to this. One of the comments in the last session was to make sure that we drilled into the mortar, not the masonry, to mount that wall sign, which we'll certainly do. And there's a small ATM topper on top of the ATM itself. One question from the last meeting was the canopy itself is actually open underneath. It just has two legs up the side. That really is for safety because you can see everything. You can see behind the ATM. You can see kind of all around it. So it's not just a wall of an ATM with a box around it. It's legs next to an ATM in the middle. Next slide, please. This is just a colored up version of this to show the colors of the ATM. The signage is, of course, internally illuminated. Next slide. Next slide. We'll skip over the electrical. There's some signage at the end that I'd like everyone to see. There should be a signage sheet. There we go. This is the little ATM topper that goes on top of the unit itself. Just has the logo on it, and it houses some of the modem and equipment that the ATM uses. So it's a necessary thing that sits on top of the ATM underneath the canopy. Next slide. And this is the adjacent wall sign that's going to be mounted on the building. It has a nice sort of a scale to it, being along the pedestrian street, and you can see it walking down the street here. So we thought it was a nice addition. That's everything for us. If there's any questions, I'm happy to go over them.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. We'll begin with feedback from the local design review committee.
Madam Chair, this project was seen by the Ohio City Design Review Committee last week, and the committee did not have a quorum, but the members discussed the location of the ATM. As Ben mentioned in the presentation, they suggested possibly moving it slightly closer to the building. They also mentioned the space around the ATM, but overall we're favorable to the proposal.
Excellent. Thank you. And staff report.
Madam Chair, staff recommends approval as presented.
Excellent. Thank you. Then we'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Mr. Bonezzi.
Start us off on this gloomy morning. I would agree with the design review. I think the location and plan of the ATM in relation to the curtain wall feels a little far out. Yeah, there we go. But to counteract my own critique, there is already the kind of seating area that naturally pushes you away from the area. So like maybe my head motion makes sense. It's like a back and forth. Like, is it too close? Is it too far? But the more I look at it, the less I'm thinking it's too far. But I could see where the design review's concerns were. The blade sign is extremely elegant. It's going on a pretty elegant building. So I think overall it's really well done. And I also like that you mentioned, this is just an aside note, but working in public institution buildings a lot, the idea of safety is really important. So I like that in your presentation, you acknowledged why it's not enclosed. It's something I've really attuned to recognizing now. And I appreciate that you're thinking about safety, because especially when it's not attached to the wall, it's very important that you can see beyond this ATM to, God forbid, if someone's behind it or something. But overall, I am in support. I do think if you could push it slightly towards the curtain wall, it might just help to further feel like it's in the alcove, because right now it feels like the back of it's in line with like where the alcove starts.
Mhm.
But that'd be my only recommendation. So otherwise,
Okay.
I like it.
And we heard that critique last time. I considered that. My only concern is to make sure that we're not shedding water onto the building.
Yeah, that's
So I'm trying to strike that balance, right?
yes.
Of
Because my
tucking
other
it in an
thought is
alcove.
if you push it closer, there's less of a chance of someone hiding behind it.
That too, sure.
So, but that's
So
all.
we're trying to strike that balance. I considered moving it closer and I decided against it because of just the practicalities of making sure that we don't have a leaking facade in the
Mhm.
future.
And can you remind me, the curtain wall that's behind there, is it glazing to grade? It's not like, it's not
It
seating.
is, yeah.
It is, it's glazing.
But it is glazing to grade. The pavement does angle away from the building,
Okay,
obviously.
but it's not like doing
So
a,
we have positive drainage at least, and that's the goal.
that's a goal. Okay, but it's not like on a 4-inch stem wall, like it is true glazing.
No, it's not.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't appear to be from the photos. I think it's right to the grade.
So in that sense, I completely agree with what you're saying.
Mhm.
That's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr. Panazzi.
Thomas.
I would echo the same comment. You know, I feel like it's placed versus integrated, where it sits right now, related to the curtain wall. So I would also recommend that it, gets studied to pull back and understand the shedding of the water. But if you have positive drainage on the sidewalk, you shouldn't have an issue shedding water. It should shed away from the curtain wall, the building, and the unit itself.
And I think that if you'd like to look at that, the next sheet, A 1.0. Oh, sorry, maybe sheet 3 of my presentation has a little section that
Mm.
describes here, right here.
Yeah.
It has a section that describes pretty well the condition. So there's a drip edge there. It's not like things just run off the roof and hit the walls. There's an edge that drips straight down. That's my concern as an architect that we're working next to a building. I'm concerned any closer we run the risk of causing an issue to the building. So we'll consider it. We'll study it further, but I'm just trying to be practical here and not cause any problems with the building.
Looking at your ATM plan, there's something that looks, it's a corrugated edge. It looks like metal decking under your plan, ATM plan 3, I believe
Yeah.
it is. What is that indicating?
We're sitting on a very complicated wall. There's a sheet pile below us that's part of the parking garage below. So we had a structural engineer help us study this and figure out how to mount to this wall. We're hitting at it right on the edge. So we're bolting through the floor. It's actually a sandwich slab there. We're bolting through the floor of the parking garage. We're hitting it kind of at the edge. So it's a little goofy, but we had a structural engineer really study this. It's going to be re-waterproofed around those bolts. And then the ATM pad report on top of it.
Okay.
So that's what you're seeing. That was a real cause of concern and study. We really had to get into that and figure out exactly how to mount it here, because it's not just sitting on the ground. There's a parking garage below.
Right. And I only wonder, would it be, easier to incorporate your conduits and so forth? And obviously you have to get to there if you were a little bit closer to the building. Like I said, it's just a personal preference. I think it would feel more integrated with the overall design if it was pulled back line, but understand that we have to be conscious of the water issues it could cause. But you have 2'6" there. So even if you could take that down to 2 foot or 1'6", so it wasn't projecting as far, that would meet my satisfaction.
I would just say we'll consider it. I would hope we would get approval without that as a condition, but we'll consider it and study it further.
Director Wong?
Hi, good morning. I would be interested in making a motion with that as a recommendation for further study rather than a condition. Should I go ahead and make a motion?
Not seeing any other hands up, please.
Oh, well, I don't, I will go ahead. I will make a motion to approve as presented with the recommendation that they study the placement of the kiosk, moving it closer to the building.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Benezzi?
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson? Mr. Benezzi?
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio?
Yes.
Mr. Dryer?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Director Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Tarasic?
Yes.
And Ms. Trout?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Excellent. Thank you. We look forward to seeing your project move forward.
Thanks so much. Appreciate all of your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll move on to our second applicant, located at 2706 Franklin Boulevard, the Lutheran School of Phlebotomy ramp installation.
All right, good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Before we begin, I need to recuse myself from this project.
So does that mean Vice Chair Strickland will be chairing?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I didn't state that. Yes. Vice Chair Strickland, please lead this part of the meeting.
Well, the project's already been introduced, so I'll ask the applicant to go forward with their presentation.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes, we can
Okay,
hear you
perfect.
fine.
Okay. I'm Erica Hillo, project manager for VOCON. I've got Anthony Rodriguez here as well. He's the project architect. And then Matt McRailed with the Cleveland Clinic. Our project is a 2,600 square foot renovation project of a 2-story existing firehouse building, which we're going to be renovating into a phlebotomy lab. Next slide. Next slide. So it's currently located on Franklin Boulevard. Next slide. You can skip this one as well. So the existing firehouse, it's a brick building, there's some concrete detailing. The scope of the project is really just to add a ramp to the exterior. Per the renovations on the interior, we have to, per code, add that ramp in, so it is a requirement for accessibility. The front entrance has some nice brick pavers, some nice detailing with a fence, etc. So we were trying to avoid the front entrance. You can see on the northwest elevation there, there is an entrance on that side of the building. We're really trying to keep the ramp on that side to minimize the impact on the front. Next slide. So these are some closer up images of the firehouse or the new phlebotomy lab, and it was actually relocated in the 1970s. So the foundation is not historic. You can see it, there's the CMU there, and then you've got an existing stair already in place. So we are going to be removing that existing stair, modifying it, adding a ramp and a stair in its place. You can see there's 3 different kind of guardrail rail situations going on. Black is the primary color, just something really kind of simple. Next slide, please. And here are the plans. The left plan is the existing conditions where you can see there's already a stair in place. The proposed plan is the center plan there, where we have the ramp and the stair coming out of the building. The plan on the right would be a value engineer alternate. We would ask for approval on both plans in case we have to head that direction. But really, it's just, we're trying to minimize the impact. We're keeping the ramp separated from the building itself. Nothing is going to really attach except for at the landing. Next slide, please. And then here you can see an elevation. We're just going to do a simple guardrail, handrail to meet accessibility requirements. It will be black. And down below, it's kind of a little bit hard to read there, but there's a detail of how this is going to attach to the building. The handrail, per our design review meeting last week, we are going to not attach it to the building itself. We are going to attach it to the ramp. So we're not going to be attaching anything to the facade of the building. And that is really it.
Yes, just to touch on what Erica was saying. So the building was relocated in approximately like 1978. The existing ledger stone for the original building remains, and below that is a CMU foundation wall. The goal is to put the new ramp adjacent to the existing foundation wall, and then we're going to have a compressible filler along that edge, so we're not actually pouring the concrete up against the building. I just thought I wanted to highlight that we're, because of the historical ledger, we're not actually connecting to the building. We're offset about half an inch.
All right, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'll ask for staff to comment on design review comments from Ohio City.
Thank you. This project was viewed by the Ohio City Design Review Committee. They did not have quorum, but the members discussed the installation of the railing to the existing building and the impacts of the brick, suggested a backplate to install the railing into the mortar instead of the brick, and they discussed the connection of the new landing to the historic sill and impacts on the historic brick, and discussed the foundation impacts, which were all addressed in or brought up in the presentation. The committee was favorable to the changes proposed.
All right. And staff recommendations?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff agrees with the committee's recommendations and recommends approval.
All right, thank you. With that, I'll open it up for comments from the commission. I do not see any hands raised. So, Giancarlo?
Yes, good morning. I was wondering, when that building was originally relocated, I think the foundation wall was just the central block. I was wondering if the ramp where the central block is, will something be done to make that look a little more historical and do away with the center block, or cover it with something more historical like stone?
The existing foundation wall, the plan was to leave
There's
all
a
the
picture
existing conditions
that shows
as is.
right
So-
there, yeah, that wall there. What's happening there? On the left photograph.
That was, the plan was for that to be existing to remain.
Mm-hmm.
And, we didn't want to impact the existing site, other than the addition of a ramp, which was going to be cast in concrete.
So that portion of the wall is really outside the scope of the proposed ramp project. So I think the answer to your question, Giancarlo, is that's going to remain as it currently exists.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any further comments from the commission? If not, I'll add my comments now. I certainly appreciate that the applicant has avoided any modifications to the front of the building. And I think it's very practical to erect this ramp on the side of the building and minimize the impact on the historic front facade. And the adjustments that they've made based on the design review comments in terms of making the rail installation and the ramp construction independent from the historic structure. So with that, I will entertain motion. Mr. Benesi?
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. I propose to approve the project as presented.
All right, and that would include the proposed primary option as well as the alternative for the ramp only.
Correct. I'd say that both options are acceptable.
Okay. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Alan.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dreyer. Any further discussion on the motion? With that, Dan, please call the roll and announce results.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Benesi?
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Director Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion is passed.
Look forward to seeing your project move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll turn it back over to our chairperson.
Thank you. We'll then move on to our next applicant located at 1904 West 44th Street, gutter and porch replacements. I'd like to welcome the applicant. Unmute your mic and tell us about your project.
Good morning. My name is John Elbord. Also next to me is the other owner, my husband. We've lived at the property since 1994. If we could go to the next slide, please. The house faces west on West 44th Street in a residential district. It was built in the later 1800s, 1860, 1880, I'm not really sure. It was renovated back in 92, 93 by a local contractor. As you can see, the house needs work. The front of the house is much higher than the whole back portion of the house. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Next, please. Okay. Right now, the house has what are called boxed gutters on it, and they have mechanically they have failed. Partially due to the way they were installed, I believe, or renovated way back when, but also given the age of the house settles, and the water is not moving like it should at this point. What you're seeing is the south rear portion of the house, again, which is a much lower portion of the house. And this is the most critical part where the gutters have failed. And what we are proposing, if we could go to the next slide, please. That's another picture. When the box gutters were redone, if you could see where the original braces are, the wood that was used to replace them is basically real thin plywood, which shouldn't have been used. And then to the right on that picture is the left portion of a very small side porch, which will be the subject of this renovation as well. To get a better picture of the gutter issue, if we could go 2 slides up to the north end of the house. Now, this is the north rear of the house. You can see in the middle of the picture the peak of the front of the house, where the height of the house is. But again, the box gutters have failed all along here. What happens when it rains, and it's done this since we bought the house, the water just comes over the what is supposed to be the trench in there, where the water is supposed to go down to a downspout. What we are proposing is modifying the rear portion of the house, in that instead of it having a box gutter, the installation of a modern type gutter somewhere along right above where those braces are, which is going to cause a little modification of the roof above there to make sure that the water does come down into the gutter. The braces that are there, we believe they are original, and they will either be rehabilitated or basically made again. The contractor who is going to be doing this work, his name is Charles from Civitas Cleveland, is I believe on this call, just on his phone. He can probably better explain that part of what I'm talking about. Chuck, are you on the call? Perhaps he's not. This is a drawing he did. The left drawing, see, and it's a little exaggerated there, where the trough is, where the water is supposed to go, and then come down through downspout. The trough is not that deep on the actual house right now. On the right here, what we're envisioning is installing supplemental joists on the top, so there's a place to hang the metal gutter, and then behind that there will still be the wood, and then it will come down into the decorative part of the braces on the house. The gutters that we're proposing, the company I'm dealing with is called Family Gutters. They could not be here today, but depending on what the final colors of the paint job on the house, the gutters will mimic the color of that part of the architecture. So quite frankly, it should really blend in. And again, this is on the rear sides of the house. The north and south side of the house, and obviously the rear is a gable, so that really doesn't apply. In terms of the porch, if we could go back a couple slides, please. The one that perhaps has the air conditioner on it, or in the picture. Okay, this is the drawing done by Civitas. The side porch is probably no more than 4x3. It's just an entry and egress method to get in the house. What is being proposed, the roof of the porch will be restored as much as we can, and then rebuilt to what is there now. We're not proposing changing the quote unquote design or the architecture or anything like that on the roof. Currently, and when we bought the house, the braces that hold the roof up, what had been installed were just 4x4 posts. We are proposing to change those to a more decorative posts that would mimic what's on the front part of the house, as well as adding spindles that mimic the front part of the house. When it was redone, it was simply, again, done with the 4x4 and just straight wood spindles. And there are 3 steps that would face west, and that just goes up onto the porch, and then immediately there's a door to go into the rear of the house. I will say to the committee, I spent a good part of 9 months just trying to find a carpenter, a construction company that would even take this on. And Chuck has stuck with me as we've been going through this process, and he has years of experience and is very tuned into the whole idea that we want to maintain as much of the historical relevance as possible during this whole project. Thank you.
John, this is Chuck from Civitas. Just want to let you know that I'm on the line.
Thank you, Chuck. Perhaps if the committee has questions, you can help me out. You're the contractor and carpenter. I don't do a good job with the verbiage.
Well, thank you for the presentation. I think that's very helpful. We will move on to design review feedback.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed by the Ohio City Design Review Committee. They did not have quorum at that meeting last week, but they discussed the care taken in removing the existing box gutters, as well as the installation of the existing roof. And for the porch, they suggested an age-appropriate lattice to be on that underside of the porch. The committee members were favorable to the changes proposed on the home.
Excellent, thank you. And staff report?
Staff agrees with the committee recommendations and recommends approval.
Excellent, thank you. We'll now open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who'd like to start us off? Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, certainly I appreciate the time and the attention that the applicant, the owner of this property, is paying to the rehabilitation of this house. Obviously, they care very much about the existing character of the house and trying to maintain that as much as possible while coming up with a cost-effective solution for the failed box gutters. And I think since it's primarily in the back of the house, that I think it's reasonable to install a modern K-gutter in replacement of the box gutters in this location. I have a question for the contractor. The way this gutter is depicted, I'm assuming you're using strap hangers for the gutter, and I just want to confirm that those straps will be installed under the replacement shingles.
Well, that's, my name is Chuck at Civitas again. I am not the, per se, I'm not the roofing contractor. I'm not sure the sequence of what's going on there, but maybe John can speak to that.
Yeah, I can. I've had conversations with Family Gutter, and they want to talk with Chuck more. They would prefer not to use straps because that's not the best case scenario in maintaining a gutter in general, from what I'm told. However, that did come up during one of the conversations, and if it is necessary to use the straps, yeah, they won't be just exposed. They would be under the replacement shingles.
Yeah, and I would agree that, the concealed hangers attached to a vertical gutter board would be preferable to the strap hangers, but the way it's detailed, that couldn't be accomplished unless you built out the fascia for that gutter board. So either way, I think that it sounds like you've got competent contractors engaged. And as long as if strap hangers are used, that they're concealed under the shingles, then I don't have any problem with that either installation.
Yeah, if I may, I made actually a point of that, and I think that's how the conversation came up with the gutter people, because I don't like that look on a house, and it would just so detract from our house. It would bother me.
Understood. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. I would echo Mr. Strickland's comment on that. This is a little gem of a house, so I appreciate your attention to this detail and wanting to really maintain this house. Having the gutter anchoring concealed would also be my recommendation. I would also make any approval contingent on submitting the final colors of the gutters, downspouts, and the house so that we could see it all together, and the final spindle and column design. One thing to clarify was from the local committee's comments about the side porch, about an age-appropriate lattice. Jessica, were you at that meeting, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I took note of that at the last meeting. Yeah, and my response was that we would research. First off, we'd take a look at the front porch and try to duplicate whatever apron and grill there is at the front porch. And if there's nothing that we can refer to there, we would probably research similar style homes in the neighborhood and get some glean some knowledge from how they've handled the situation of a grill under their porch deck, and imitate that.
And that's what I just wanted to make sure that we were giving you some clarity. The front porch does have a lattice, a small lattice, below the roof. And I would encourage you to look at the front detailing first, for inspiration for that lattice.
Sure.
And those are all my comments. Other questions or comments from the commission? Director Wong?
This is just a quick thank you for your attention to detail, and I appreciate the restoration of this house. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Strickland? Was your hand still up by accident, or did you have more to add?
I put my hand up to propose a motion to approve as presented, with the condition that the final colors for the gutter, downspouts, in the house be submitted to staff for record, along with the turned columns and spindles at the side porch.
Would you want to add the condition that the either a recommendation or a requirement to add a lattice below the side porch to match the front?
Yes, following the comments from the design review committee, they termed it age appropriate lattice, but taking cues from the existing front porch or surrounding neighborhood.
Perfect, thank you. So we have a motion with some conditions. Do we have a second? Director Wong?
Well, second.
I saw your hand go up on my screen. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Benezi,
Yes, couldn't find the button.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray, Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trosik,
Yes.
and Ms. Trott.
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
excellent. Thank you. Well, good luck with the restoration of your house, and we look forward to seeing your house come to life.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.
You too. We'll now move on to our next applicant, located at 11310 Wade Park Avenue, the renovation and garage demolition.
Thank you. My name's Joanne Brown. I'm with Case Western Reserve University. With me on our planning, design, and construction team is Wendy Harbaugh, the project manager, Chris Panicki, director of our group, and we also have represented Julian Rogers, who is our assistant VP of local government and community relations. I'm going to give a brief overview, and then Wendy's going to go through the details of our presentation. So this is a former residence that was built around 1917, 14. It was in the 70s. It became the home of Fellowship Christian Church. The university purchased this in, I want to say, 2017. We have discussed demoing the property for other initiatives. However, our new president has seen this as a valuable opportunity to create a community engagement center. So what we are proposing and what you will see is a renovation of the structure proper, a request for the demolition of a garage that has deteriorated. You will see a preliminary site plan showing parking and new ADA accessibility to the facility. Today, we are here to talk primarily about the demolition and the renovation to the structure. We do also plan on making what I'm going to say a minor change to the front of the house and putting it back actually to more of its historic facade. So we do have documentation. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Wendy Harbaugh. Thank you very much.
Here's the vicinity map. It's located on Wade Park Avenue, adjacent to our sustainability house and our North Residential Village. Next slide. Here's the overall property. It's actually two parcels there for now, but the house sits on the main parcel. Next slide. Existing conditions of the site include the garage along the back, and then what is used as the driveway essentially to the house and garage is actually currently still a street, which we will eventually move to have vacated and consolidated with the rest of the property. Next slide. Here's the existing garage condition. The roof is 70% collapsed, and it's a brick bearing structure that has essentially failed from neglect over probably the last 50 years. We did provide a backup after our initial meeting with the Magnolia Wade Park review of a structural analysis, so that's also included in our submission. We seek to demo this this year. Next slide. There's some more photos of the existing structure and collapse. Next slide. This is the front north facade of the existing structure. So the proposed scope includes demolishing the existing garage, vacating the street or driveway, and then it's currently a brick paved drive, which we would maintain the paver bricks and repair as needed. That was a request of the Magnolia Wade Park review, but I believe we would want to do that anyways. The change of use is conditional approval, use approval for business in this instance. So the overall scope is to renovate the exterior structure, including removing the second floor porch addition and exterior door, third floor, renovate the interior structure for new community outreach programming, and it will house 4 to 5 full-time staff plus meeting and community spaces. The site plan includes adding a new parking lot in the rear at the south of the structure, new accessibility entrance, constructed of composite wood with metal rails and guard, which currently we have both the parking lot, and also including new landscaping to complement the neighborhood and historic feel of the house. Currently, we're only seeking a conceptual on the parking lot and accessibility ramp and landscaping, because we're not to the point that we're developed enough, but we do need to, we're seeking a final on the exterior improvements. Next slide. Here, this illustrates how we will fit the parking lot in, and then new sidewalks and ramp to the rear entrance of the house. Next slide. This is a close-up of the ramp. As you can see, we turn and then we would have 2 entrances at the rear, and we'd also maintain the current front door, as well as at least one of the side entrances off the driveway.
And I would just like to add, there is a lot of consideration for the location of the new entry work as well as the parking lot. We really wanted to keep it to the rear of the site so that it does not in any way impede the residential feel of the neighborhood.
This illustrates the extent of the exterior upgrades and renovations, including a new roof, new gutters and downspouts, new exterior lighting, which we do not have currently details on that, but that we'll come back with the specifics on that. Remove the second floor porch, and later in the presentation we have a photo of the house without that addition. We'll replace all the windows with metal clad exterior, and will be double hung in color white, and then paint all the existing trim. So the trim, downspout, and gutter boards and window trim would all be the same color. We have a rendering later in the presentation. Next slide. This is the rear or south facade of the house, showing the area that the ramp will go. That's still part of the conceptual design. And then we'll renovate the same as the front with new windows and trim boards and paint. And we'll need to tuck point the brick. Oh, and one of the other items that currently the stone window sills are painted, so we would like to restore the stone back to the stone color. Next slide. Here's a side entry. This would, one comment from the Magnolia Wade Park is they'd like us to keep the look of the opening in the front, which we're thinking we need to remove this door. But the door to the right, but if we've left it, that agreed that we would replace it to a window and infill below and remove the steps. They were amenable to that change. And then the door to the more to the rear, we would restore that and update the repair the stair approach and that, and probably provide a cover, but those we still have a lot of work to do on that part. So that would be, we'd probably, when we come back for the additional conceptual, have confirmation of what we plan to do there. Next slide.
And I'd just like to add, we're working through the current program of the house from the interior. There are existing, I want to say 5 entrances, as well as a entrance into a basement lower level. So again, based on what we come out with programming, we do anticipate eliminating one of the exits.
This is the west facade that where you can see the addition on the upper porch and the approximate location of the new accessible ramp approach. Next slide. This is the front entrance, which we would like to restore to its original and repair, update to more functional, and add back exterior lighting, sconces. But
also, the detail on the ramp that you see there would match the ramp that's in the exterior of the building, which is a little more decorative. But that would, again, be another detail in our next presentation before your committee.
The photo on the left is from the county archive with the structure without the second floor enclosure. And then the right is an earlier photo of the house from the 80s when I think the historic district was established. Next slide. We were explaining, these are some photos of the existing roof framing is still intact. This is where.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yeah, I'm trying to, I don't.
So we have little, well, this was, we originally provided this as evidence that there was originally the porch structure without the addition, and it's still all intact. So we should be pretty readily able to remove that additional, the addition on the second porch without a lot of structural impact. This is the original framing. And
yeah,
the one on the left is from the attic space, and the one on the right is looking up from the second floor space.
Right. As Wendy noted, there was some concern when we presented removing this element from the house that it would impede the structural integrity of the roof. So we did do a little more investigation and found that we can remove that element that was added that isn't historic to the original building and not affect the structural integrity of the roof.
Next slide. These are some interior photos of the newer style framing when they did the enclosure of the upper level, and along with the original opening to the porch. And then here's a rendering of the building without the upper enclosure and the coloring that we seek. And we'll just match the dormer. There's a window or a door on the right side. We'll just frame that in and then extend its wood shape will match the existing and repaint and all of the dormer. Next slide. It's an image from the corner and with the new windows.
Could you go back to that last slide for a minute? I just want to make another. So we have been investigating whether or not we could use that second story of that area as an outdoor patio. In our initial investigations from code perspectives, we need to look at the framing structure of the ceiling, which would be the floor of that ceiling of the room below, as well as the railings. So this is a very low, it is very low, and we don't want to have any hazards of people falling. So if we did do that, we might have to entertain some type of an additional glass or decorative railing on that. That may be a future phase. This was, as Wendy has shown, an addition. It isn't a space that we need right now programmatically. So I just wanted to reiterate right now that door in this presentation, in this first phase of this project, the restoration, is strictly for maintaining access for cleaning, etc. If we do entertain use of that, that would be a separate issue in a future phase. And I don't anticipate that we will have all the drapery that's shown on that elevation.
Yeah, the perimeter rail off that porch is at around 30 inches from what I could tell from the measuring on site. Next slide. Adjacent context, our Stephanie Tubb Jones Residence Hall. This is the front from the street side, and then the right image is an existing retaining wall and fencing facing from the back corner of the property. And the street will maintain the brick. Next slide. Some more context photo looking at Stephanie Tubb Jones on the right of the right image and our sustainability house. And then the slide on the right is our sustainability house, which sits on the corner. The house is directly, the structure that we're renovating is directly to the right of that image. Next slide. And then the context of the neighborhood is all residential. Next slide. The slide on the right is our corner lot. And then here's some color scheme of examples of houses that are within sight of our house with the white window and the dark brick. Next slide. Next, more context. Next slide. I think after this slide, we have additional material information. Next slide. Oh, I guess that's didn't get included. I had some material information included if that's required.
Why don't you review that verbally, and then you can always follow up with that additional slide.
Okay, yeah, go back to that slide. So the roof, I had presented a dimensional asphalt shingle with varying brown colors as what we would use to replace the roof. And then Pella windows is what I had submitted with they're very white. They have like a little bit of an off-white. It's not tan, but the Pella window, the Architect series, and then the front door we would do at Case Blue. And also there's a little, that half round over to the left is actually a leaded glass window that we would like to keep, and we'll repair that and provide a storm panel to protect it for future. That all the gutters and gutter boards will just match the window color. So it's pretty simple, which I think was the original schema to begin with. So I think that's the extent of the renovations.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the presentation. We'll then move on to feedback from the local design review committee.
Madam Chair, this project was reviewed by the Magnolia Wade Park East Boulevard Grantwood Allotments Design Review Committee, and they did recommend approval of the demolition of the garage and the changes to the home, including the removal of the current second floor enclosed balcony and restoration of the original opening and open balcony. The members did discuss frustration with prior neglect of the property, neglect of the garage, so that it's not in a structurally viable place to be able to restore or reuse it. And they did have concerns for the brick street, which they did acknowledge in the meeting, that they would want to, the committee wanted to state support and request for continual care and preservation of those bricks for that street. And the door that was mentioned to be removed on the east facade was discussed, as mentioned, a preference for retaining a door there without the stairs as decorative or possibly functional, or as the proposal had, infilling the space with a window and then brick below. And the project is expected to return back to the committee with, as discussed, any further changes and also landscaping.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll move on to staff comments.
Madam Chair, this is actually two agenda items here, or two issues here. So we'll need separate motions. One is for the garage demo, and then a separate one for the rehab of the house. Staff recommends approval of the garage demolition. As far as the house goes, we recommend consideration of an alternate color to white for the new windows and the trim. The white is just not the most appropriate color for the style of building. So we'd like to see some, I guess, toning down of that color, or lack of color. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. We'll then open up the floor for questions and comments from the commission. Who would like to start us off? Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like the applicant to address that last comment from the staff report with regard to the trim color on the windows and the fascia. It sounded like they were moving away from a stark white towards a more softer white alternative from Pelham.
Correct. That's what we were proposing.
All right, so that hasn't been presented to staff or design review at this point?
I believe this is the first we're hearing of that request. We certainly are not opposed to looking at colors that the commission may see more appropriate.
All right, that's great. So if you could work with staff and come to an agreement on an appropriate color, that would be great. The other question I had was in regard to exterior lighting. The presentation depicted lights on the building. I didn't know if that was what was proposed or something that's existing that will be replaced with alternative lighting.
That's all existing. We will present any updated lighting with the next. As we move forward with the pro.
So lighting and landscaping will come back?
Yes.
Follow up with that. We would not keep what is there.
That's very good to hear. Yeah, thank you. So that's fine. That's my only questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I recall, I think it was roughly 2 years ago that the commission arranged for a site visit at this property. We were not able to get inside. We met with members of the local design review committee, but nobody got to see the inside. But it was open to the elements, and it was not being cared for at all. So I'm really, really happy to see that this is going to be brought back to life, and it's not the trek towards demolition is not continuing. So that really is a very good thing, and I think a very good thing for the neighborhood. As far as the color of the windows, I agree with the staff. I think the white is not appropriate. I was wondering, it looks like the original windows are still there, and has there been any investigation done as to what the original paint color might have been, if it was, dark green or a black, or, I was just asking to see if they've checked on that.
I can definitely do some additional investigation of that. They're currently dark brown, but there may be some paint underneath there.
And I just want to confirm the shake shingle that's going to be replaced when the third floor door is removed, and it looks like it's being painted a brown that kind of complements the brick of the house, and I just wanted to confirm that.
Yes, we would match the existing color.
All right, well, thank you, and I'm glad to see that this building is going to be renovated.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I think I echo every one who's commented so far. I appreciate that we've moved away from demolishing more of these the houses here and looking at the restoration of this. I think it's a fairly modest renovation, and I'm in support of the exterior building improvements. I agree. I think the white color consideration for an alternate color. I know you had mentioned that you're going to an alternate Pella color. I'm assuming it's like the linen white color. Is that what you were?
Yes, yes.
So if you could submit the final, any approval would be contingent on submitting the full material board for the records. And I would encourage you to update that color if it's not, so that we can look at that. But I think it's a fairly modest renovation. I'm in support of it. Any other questions and comments from the commission? All right, Mr. Brunges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. They're here also conceptually for the parking lot in the rear ADA access. Are there any comments on this placement and general idea? Because they will have to return for this as well once they've fleshed this out more. And any motion should be contingent on that returning as well.
Right, returning for any site improvements, ramp additions, or lighting.
Yeah, lighting and landscaping, correct.
And landscaping. Okay, so then let's stay on that for a conceptual review of the site. Are there any questions and comments on that? I'll just echo what I said. I think it's a fairly modest improvements here. I appreciate that you've tried to place the larger parking lot in the rear so it's not as visible. I think the ramp placement is fairly modest and probably required to meet your entry needs. But I appreciate that you've sort of nestled it into the knuckle of the building so that it's not as visible to the public, and the house maintains its residential feel. Regarding materiality, I would just encourage you to submit that and make it very clear what they are, and try to minimize the visibility of the ramp from the street. Other questions and comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion? We have to two-part motion. We'd start with the related to the demolition of the garage structure. Mr. Strickland.
I would move to approve the demolition of the garage as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Dallin. I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Dryer. Any further discussion? All right, not seeing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Right. Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Benezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Just a minute.
Yes?
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasic,
Yes.
and Ms. Trot.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the proposal for the restoration of the building. We have a motion.
Yes, I move that we approve it as presented.
Excellent. May I recommend we add the conditions to return for any site improvements, including landscape, the ramp addition, and lighting. We'll have to return for a separate approval. And consider submission of the final material boards is a contingent or a condition, and then the consideration of an alternate color for the white windows from a stark white.
Yes.
So we have a motion with conditions and considerations. Do we have a second, Mr. Strickland?
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Benezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasic,
Yes.
and Ms. Trot.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. Well, good luck. I look forward to the restoration of this house and property.
Thank you very much.
That concludes our certificate of appropriateness. We'll now move on to concept, or before we move on, Ms. Beam, can you clarify your comment in the chat? Is the Gordon Crossing project here for a concept plan review or a certificate of appropriateness final review?
It is here for a concept plan.
Okay, thank you. So we'll now move on to our concept plan reviews. As mentioned, this is, since it is a concept plan, we will not be taking a vote. We'll be giving the owner feedback on the current design. We'll begin with the project located at 2905 J Avenue, new construction.
It's only concept? We're not voting?
Morning, everybody. This is
Good morning.
this is a new construction project located at 2905 J Avenue, West 29th and J. Next slide. This shows the location relative to J Avenue and also Waco Court to the back. There is also a side alley located off the side of the lot itself. You will notice that in the parcel aerial, this is currently a contiguous parcel. So there is the house, there is vacant land, and then there is an existing garage behind where that vacant land currently sits. Next slide. These are just some photos of existing conditions to give surrounding context. Next slide. You'll notice that it's a combination of 2-story, but there is also 2.5-story, 3-story turrets, that sort of vernacular within the neighborhood itself. Next slide. This is the proposed site plan. The The site will require a lot split that will occur so that the existing single site will be split. You will have 33 feet to the west and 39 feet to the east. We are maintaining 3-foot offset from both the existing residence and the new property off of that split. And we have also made adjustments to make sure we're maintaining a 5-foot setback off of each of the side lot lines at the closest point to the turret. The other thing you will notice, you can see where the existing garage is located. The owner's intent is to replace that existing garage. So that will be replaced with a 2-story garage structure. There will be a combination of garage and also have habitable area above it. Next slide. This is a quick overview of the floor plans. You can see the foundation plan, the first floor plan, second floor, and then the third floor plan essentially is the turret that happens at the corner of the house. The basement and the first floor each have 1,156 square feet. The second floor has just over 1,000 square feet. It's 1,093. And then the turret portion at the third floor has 309 square feet. So above grade, you're looking at a total of about 2,550 to 2,558 square feet total. Next slide. So before we go to the elevations, this is essentially representative of the material palette that we will be using on this house. The primary siding will be an indigo blue, which you can see on the left portion of the swatch. Accent siding will be Nantucket gray, right side of the swatch, obviously. Trim gutters and soffits and fascia will all be white. And then there's also a brick portion that happens on the front facade that will be the cavalry gray that you can see under those samples. And then where you see the little finger pointing there, it would be black asphalt roof shingles. Yeah. And just so you know, the siding would be a hardy board panel. It's not going to be vinyl. So did you want to?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm the builder. I just want to make sure I'm clear, or we're clear. How you doing? Those 3 swatches that were laid over the brick for color only, those are vinyl samples, but it's not going to be vinyl siding. I just want to be clear. We understand the historic requirements of no vinyl. It's going to be a hardy plank.
So one of the items that comes up within this height district, obviously we have a 35-foot maximum height within height district 1. There is a condition within that says for every foot that you step back from that, you can gain an additional foot of height up to a maximum of 50 feet. So the main building, as you can see, we're at 32 feet 6 for the main portion of the structure. Now the turret goes up to 42 feet. So essentially we're stepping back the turret in order to comply with height district 1. And again, as you can see here, our material palette as represented in the previous slide. And you can see how that's implemented here. Next slide. Now this gives an example of what is intended with the level 1 and level 2 for the garage plan. The intent is to create a habitable suite above the garage that occurs at the back of the property and essentially will replicate the footprint of the existing garage to be removed. Next slide. And as you can see here, you have essentially the new garage with the habitable area above it. Now, if you can go back to the site plan. And again, the materials on the garage will echo what is being used on the new house. So there are a few zoning interpretations with this in terms of there's a side alley that occurs, and whether or not that side alley is an actual street versus being an alley. The existing garage, if you go back a few slides to the existing, yeah, you will notice here there's essentially there's an alley that happens along the. They can't see that. Oh, there's an alley that happens along the side of the property, and the existing garage is approximately 11 feet from the property line to that alley. If this is to be considered an actual street, if that triggers this being a corner lot, it would be impossible to put a new garage in place of existing if it's considered a street. So that's one of the considerations in terms of the garage and also with the habitable space above it. You want to chime in?
Yeah.
Before you comment again, I'm sorry, sir. Do you mind stating your name for our record since you're not on the agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. Anthony Cusia, Cleveland Custom Builders.
Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead with your comments.
Yeah, I've done some other homes specifically on Clinton. I'm working on my 4th new build now on Clinton, so I'm very familiar with the historic requirements. I would just mention that the existing home is 11 feet off that. We can't seem to find a name for that side street. And we're the new structure that we're proposing, which is the garage with the habitable space above, is going to be approximately 12 feet off the property of that street. So we're actually improving that distance to push it further away from that alley.
And just to clarify, on Google Earth, it's called West 29th Place, formerly Wade or Ward Alley.
Okay, thank you. So from West 29th Place, thank you.
Any additional items to present before we move on?
Nope, all set.
Excellent. Then we will move on to design review feedback.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed by the Ohio City Historic Design Review Committee. Conceptually, they commented on the substantial turret that they requested be scaled down and marked on the brick on the front and, talked about the materiality for the building with the brick and the siding. They did request for trim detailing, a shallower roof, and more balance with the design and scale, and the competing roof lines.
Thank you. Move on to staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As mentioned, there are some variances needed through zoning. This still needs to go through the PetBot committee review. Staff feels that the building is not in scale. It was mentioned about the height regulations and the zoning. Should be reminded that the Secretary of the Interior standards and is the form-based code for this location, so that would override city's zoning on height. For the height regulations, they are proposing 42 feet. With the height District 1, we would recommend that it be below the height as required by zoning and to maintain the overall feel of the district. The lot split would be needed, as mentioned. This is zone 2 family. So with the lot split, it would conform to have the front house and the back house. As you can see on the map here, it did originally have a house in front. And you can see the scale and the dimensions here with the garage in the rear. The dwelling house size regulation for the rear garage would require a variance. Minimum lot size, which is a standard variance granted because all these are non-conforming lots in this district. It's something you see all the time, and that the maximum gross floor area exceeds. So they mentioned that access from the side street and lot width less than 40 feet. Again, that's a common. Front yard alignment with existing is proposing 15 feet. We should look at all the setbacks. I think there has to be an average setback, or it should meet existing setbacks. Interior side yard. So they've mentioned all of them. So that's some of these things we have to take into consideration for the design. We are supportive of a building on this lot, and we agree with the design review committee. The turret is a bit disproportionate to the rest of the house. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who'd like to start us off? All right, well then I will begin. I would agree with the local committee's comments. The inconsistent roof pitch lines on the house and between the house and the garage are troubling to me. I prefer the more historical alignment of pitches so that it has that unification across at least the house, if not the house and the garage. So they feel like they work together. I think the pitch of the turret is the troubles me the most, because I think it just brings it up way too high. If that was brought down and the scale of the turret brought down, I would be more aligned with the design, because I think that the turret is overbearing the house right now. The house looks very underscaled compared to the turret itself. And I would agree with their comments related to the brick. It feels like it's applied more in a suburban way than it would be in the urban way, since it is just at the entry door and not consistently across the base. So I'd encourage you to revisit how you're using your brick. I'm not against using brick on the front, but having it more integrated with the entire design versus just applied to the one area would be what I would recommend. And can you go back to the garage, Carl? And I see the 3 elevations. This is the street facing the 2 sides. I would encourage you to incorporate the last elevation, because I think, once again, adding, readdressing or revisiting your roof pitch and having it align with the house would make this feel more incorporated within the neighborhood and the site. But I'd also look at some of the detailing of if you have multiple colors on the house between the gray and the blue. Incorporating some of that into this garage would be make it feel more like a mother-in-law house than just a 2-story garage.
Yeah.
And I think having a street view elevation would be helpful to see how this house fits to the context based on what's on the right and left of this house. And that concludes my comments. Other questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in agreement with some of the comments made by Ms. Trott and the local design review. The turret and the balance of the house seem to be competing with each other. They don't work together. And I think the turret is oversized, and the roof is too high. Lowering the pitch would be helpful. I see all this new construction either seems to be this dark blue or a dark gray, and there's just too much conformity here. I think we need to entertain other colors, especially in these historic districts, which are really a welcoming place for a more bold palette. I don't like the brick in the front. It's just not something that is part of the historic fabric of the design of the neighborhood. I agree with the chair in that it looks kind of suburban. I really think, sticking with the Hardy board would probably be the way to go. But yeah, again, the turret is competing with the house is competing with the turret. It just doesn't work together as a whole. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions and comments from the commission? Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I guess, for the benefit of the applicant, so that he gets a read of as many commission members as possible, I agree totally. When I first saw this elevation, first impression that I got was that the turret is just overpowering and out of scale with the rest of the house. Also agree with the comments about the roof line for the house itself, for the turret, and I agree that the garage ought to have a similar roof line to the house so that it just all blends more uniformly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Other questions and comments from the commission? Not seeing any. Since this is a conceptual review, we will not be voting, but do you feel you've received enough feedback to continue the design of your project?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, then we look forward to seeing you back for your final review.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. We'll now move on to our last conceptual plan review, located at Gordon Crossing, East 101 Street, Woodward Avenue, and Newton Avenue, new construction.
Thank you. This is Jonathan McKay with Wood Cooper Companies. With me today, we've got Joe Burning with PCI Design Group, Rob Coffrin with PCI Design Group, and Sheila Wright with Frontline Development Group, the co-developer on this project. Next slide, please. So Gordon Crossing, it's located here at East 101st Street and Woodward Avenue. Here's a couple of the existing photographs. Can you go to the next slide, please? Can you go to the next slide, please? So I want to pay close attention here to the multi-tenant residential building, photo number 7 in particular. So what we tried to do when putting this together is try to model some of the existing multi-tenant residential buildings in the area, this being one of them. And you'll see that here when we get to the 3D mapping. Can you go to the next slide, please? And next slide. And next slide. So this is a 46 total unit workforce housing development. All the financing has been secured. It was secured through the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. It's a 9% low-income housing tax credit deal. It's 34 2-bedrooms and 12 3-bedrooms. Can you go to the next slide, please? And next slide. So let's pause here for a moment. This is what we had initially presented to OFA. You know, obviously one of the things that we heard going through the design review process was the placement of the building was a major feedback item and a critical path item that we needed to address. So just to give you context, this is what was initially presented. Obviously the building, it's close to the Newton Avenue Historic District, very close to those single family homes there. And in addition to that, the other item that we heard was the portion of the building there. It's on the corner of Newton Avenue and East 101st Street. The desire to really kind of make that a gateway or sort of a welcoming spot as you enter the historic district and you go down East 101st Street. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide, please? Here are some of the elevations that were provided to OFA. Next slide, please. All right, so in terms of the site context plan here, this is what we have changed in between the design review and then what you're seeing today. So the building now has maximized frontage along East 101st Street. We've pivoted so this way it's not at the back of those single family homes along Newton Avenue. It is now a 4-story building. Before it was a 3-story building. And in addition, we've got Woodward Avenue in terms of the entrance and then the exit going on to Newton Avenue. The big thing I want to pay attention to, which is not factored in on this plan, is that Friday we heard about the property owner at 10003 Newton Avenue there, basically right next to the driveway, that they had a desire to build a driveway and a garage, which makes sense given many of the properties there along Newton Avenue have that. So there was a request to basically expand their property line into 2 of the land bank parcels there, and they would like to have that so they could develop that. So we obviously want to be amenable to that, and we want to be good neighbors. So what we've worked out is we're happy to do that and basically shift the building closer to East 101st Street. So that landscape buffer next to the house, the driveway would all shift at least 3 feet. The reason it's not shown on this plan is because we kept it within the setback. So we went ahead, reached out to planning, reached out to the councilwoman as well, and they were supportive of the variance this would cause. So the next iteration that is currently being developed here and with that based on that feedback is going to pivot everything on Newton Avenue closer to East 101st Street. So that way it's not on top of that house there and there's going to be more space. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide, please? So here's a closer look at it, just to kind of give you a nice aerial here. In addition, I'll mention that on Woodward Avenue, that corner in East 101st Street, since there's 2 parcels there, it's private owners, I believe they're out of state, if I remember correctly. That house on the corner is not there right now. Next slide, please. And so here's some of the typical floor plans that we have. Can you go to the next slide? Again, a typical second floor plan. Next slide, please. And next slide. And next slide, please. And so here's a better idea of the different 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units that you'll be seeing. This is a 2-bedroom that's typical for the property. Next slide, please. Here's the accessible 2-bedroom unit plan. You can see the path there in the unit itself. Next slide, please. And then here's a typical 3-bedroom unit, just to give you perspective and an idea of what it would look like in the building. Next slide, please. And then here is the type A accessible for the 3-bedroom as well. Next slide, please. So here's some of the exterior elevations going along East 101st Street, excuse me. And I think you'll have a better idea once you see the context in regards to the neighborhood with the 3D mapping. So why don't we go ahead and move to that? Can you go next slide? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So here's how it looks, the exterior, basically from East 101st Street. And next slide. Here's some of the exterior finishes that we plan on incorporating into the development. Next slide, please. And then here's the view from the corner. So again, just want to highlight that that building will move closer based on being amenable to the desires of the property owner there at 10003 Newton Avenue. So everything will shift much closer to the street there. And one of the things I should point out here, it's difficult to see based on the prior photo, but there are windows behind. It's kind of set back a little bit, but there are windows behind that brick there on the corner. Next slide, please. And here's a nice aerial in relation to the corresponding uses there. Next slide, please. And then here it is, the view from the backside. Next slide, please. And here's a typical wall section. Next slide, please. And then the one thing I just want to note is the tree preservation plan that's going to be updated. The one that's included with the application on the next slide basically incorporates where the prior placement of the building was. So that is currently being updated. I just wanted to call attention to that. We understand that we're going to have to have the concept and get the placement of the building ironed out first prior to getting the tree preservation plan updated. And that's why we haven't updated that yet, but it is currently in the process. And here's the tree preservation plan. So with that being said, I will open it up to questions, comments, feedback.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. We'll begin with design review feedback.
Madam Chair, the project was seen by the Euclid Corridor Design Review Committee. Conceptually, as mentioned, it was a previous design that was much closer to Newton Avenue homes. And so the design review committee commented the building was very large and against the Newton Avenue houses and would recommend moving it further north for a buffer. So they recommended moving it closer to Woodward.
All right, thank you. We'll then move on to staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I give a report, I just wanted to make the commission aware that this project is being funded utilizing federal funds by the Department of Community Development's Housing Development Office. So this project has to go through a Section 106 review. As the commission's done in the past, the city will be utilizing this public meeting and the commission's comments as part of their public process required under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. That being said, as Jessica said, the developer attended the Euclid Corridor Design Review Committee meeting with the previous version of the plan at a conceptual level. And the new plan you're seeing today seems to have addressed a lot of the concerns raised by the committee. The design of the south facade along Newton leaves a little something to be desired. I feel like it needs a little more consideration. But the scale seems appropriate for East 101st Street, given the scale of some of the existing buildings and what was originally on the site along this section of East 101st. We would really love to see those two small parcels to the northeast of the project be incorporated somehow. Understand the developers made attempts to contact the owner, but if there's anything the city could do, particularly the Housing Development Office, to assist in that discussion, we think it could really improve the project, just give it a little more flexibility in the site. And then as far as the 10003 Newton driveway issue is concerned, as Jonathan stated, city planning supportive of any variance required to screening that would accommodate that driveway, as is staff of Landmarks. So that's all I have.
Excellent, thank you. We'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who would like to start us off? Quiet group today. Mr. Strickland.
Chair. I just really appreciate the the applicant and developer's ambitious project here, and just listening to the presentation, their adaptability to adjust the project as required to accommodate the consideration of the neighbors and the entire neighborhood in general. I really appreciate that degree of flexibility in trying to make this an appropriate development, given its scale, to work with the neighborhoods, the neighbors effectively. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Other questions or comments? Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you could go back to the front elevation photo or rendering. Okay, yeah, yes, thank you so much. This is kind of a minor thing. The entrance, I think it would enhance the look if the roof overhang was a little larger, and shadowed the, you know, a little more. And I think right now I think it's vinyl siding in that area, and the pitched areas above the two towers on either side of the entrance there. And I think to kind of bring that portion of the building out, I would like to see maybe something a little different. I was thinking kind of a board and batten look. You know, maybe that could be done with a hardy plank or something, but just to differentiate it from the rest of it. It's a nice element, and I just think it could be enhanced by those two changes. So those are my comments. Seems like a very, very nice, thoughtful design. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Ms. Montgomery, are you with ownership? Ms. Montgomery, are you with the presenting ownership group? Okay, I see her hand up, but I don't hear anything, so I'll work through that. I will give you my comments on related to the entry. I'd encourage you to revisit the design of the entry point. You know, you have some beautiful neighbors, we'll say, with the multi-story apartments that are just north of this, that, you know, if the material was changed to brick, I think it would really blend in, and you could pick up some of the cues from, you know, the surrounding areas and improve the design. It feels like the areas with the clapboard are a little, I would appreciate a little bit more detail related to those areas, specifically probably at the cornice line. I know this is a budget probably driven project, so I don't want to suggest too much, but I think really providing some details at the cornice line and would really help ground those areas, you know, of the building. Currently, they just feel very little too simple. You have some nice detailing related to the brick, and it would be nice to have a little bit more detail in those areas also. I appreciate you working with the community, as Mr. Strickland said. I just want to make sure the building, you know, what is the distance between the building to the north house, I believe it is. So it's not there anymore. Oh, there we go. I'm on Google Earth, and in some cases it shows it, in some areas it doesn't. Oh no, your rendering shows it. So
It
is
does.
that house?
It is
there or
not there anymore. It is not.
Okay. That's what was confusing me, because I keep on seeing your plans and I wasn't seeing it on Google Earth. So that is not there. So that is not a concern. So I think, but I appreciate you working with the community and trying to address their needs to really, integrate this into the overall, fabric. I think, Carl, can you go to the rear elevation? Okay, so once again, if there's any way that you could take the areas of, and forgive me, is that vinyl siding above the brick? Or is that a hardy board?
Joe, isn't it hardy board?
It can be whatever we need to do, I suppose. It was originally proposed as a vinyl siding. That is something we would definitely talk with our construction team and budgeting in order to work with you all to make that appropriate.
We encourage you to look at hardy siding for that, and providing some detail, in the larger expanses of the hardy areas, I think would really just enhance this building, specifically at the cornice line, if not to break up the larger spans of that, like on the rear of the building.
Sure. Would it make a difference if those were in different colors as opposed to just the one color? Would that change your opinion in any way?
It could. I think we'd want to see what you're proposing to really give you a definitive answer, but I think it could. I think it's just that it's a very large, mass of a singular element without any detail or color change on. So I think either one of those could really, you should study that and just look at how it can improve the overall aesthetic, which is really the part that's facing the community.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. You just let me know when my turn is.
Ms. Montgomery, are you with the ownership presenting group?
No, I'm not. I'm with Cleveland Restoration Society. Am I allowed to make comments?
Yes, 1 second. Let me just see if there's any additional commission comments, and then we can return to you. Sound good?
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? All right, not seeing any. Ms. Montgomery, would you like to give your feedback?
Yes. I see there's an entrance from Newton Avenue into Gordon Square driveway. And I'd like to make a comment that Newton Avenue is a very, very narrow street with parking on one side, and people entering into that driveway will have to come all the way down Newton Avenue because it's a one-way street to turn into that driveway into Gordon Square project, and that will create a hardship on the street with all that additional traffic. And it's even worse in the wintertime. With cars parked on the street, it's only wide enough for one car to come through.
Right.
Also, I'd like to mention that with the driveway coming from Newton Avenue, that it's also going to take up parking space on Newton Avenue, especially when 10,003 is rented out with a tenant being there. There will be additional parking on the street, even if we do have a driveway. Also, it's just really a hardship on the street.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. I think the presenter did mention, I believe that's egress only on to that street. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's still a little
we'll
bit.
move-
It's still a little bit
Yeah.
of a hardship taking up
Understand, Ms. Montgomery.
parking spots.
Yep. Understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Secretary Musson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify, Cleveland Restoration Society owns 1003 Newton and several other properties on Newton Avenue. So they, have a I guess, vested interest in how this all gets developed. But yeah, our understanding is that this is an egress only. And so since it's so close to East 101st, that this drive aisle should not have, significant impact on the historic district.
Thank you for that clarification. Other questions and comments from the commission? All right, not seeing any. Does the applicant feel like you've received enough feedback from the commission to continue the development of your project?
I believe so, and we appreciate everybody's time and the valuable feedback, and we look forward to incorporating it and next iteration. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you back for your final review.
Thanks.
That concludes our concept plan reviews. We'll now move on to design review committee appointments.
Madam Chair, Landmark staff has spoken with and reviewed the resume of Claire Bank, who I believe is here with us this morning for inclusion with the Historic West Cleveland Design Review Committee. Ms. Bank lives in the Franklin West Clinton Historic District, which is now under the jurisdiction of the Historic West Cleveland Design Review Committee. She's a registered architect with Then Design and has a lot of experience in working with new school buildings, both in and around Cleveland. Staff feels that her experience, professional and personal, would make a great addition to the Design Review Committee and recommends approval of her appointment.
Excellent. Thank you for that review. Questions and comments from the commission related to this appointment? In reviewing your resume, I think you'd be a wonderful addition to the area and to the committee.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I reviewed the applicant's or the nominee's resume as well, and I think I agree she would be a great addition to the Design Review Committee in this area, and I would move to approve her appointment.
Excellent. Thank you for that motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Benezzi?
I will second that.
Thank you for the second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Benezzi?
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia?
Yes.
Mr. Drag?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray? Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Trosik?
Yes.
And Ms. Trott?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Welcome to the committee. We look forward to you joining the committee and this group.
Thank you all.
That concludes committee appointments, and we'll move on to minutes approvals.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So last week I emailed out draft minutes for 4 meetings. One was November 14th, 2013, July 14th, 2022, August 11th, 2022, and December 22nd, 2022. I understand at least one of these meetings occurred prior to pretty much everyone's tenure on the committee. It's important that we have the approved minutes as part of the public record. Over the last several years, primarily due to staffing issues, we've accrued quite a backlog of meeting minutes that are either not completed or just have never been brought to the commission for approval. There are a total of 88 outstanding minutes, the majority of which are from 2021 and 2022. There are a number from 2019 and a handful from 2013, 2015, 16, 17, 18, and a few from 20. Jessica has been doing a great job of figuring out where all of the minutes are in the process, and she's also been working on listening to the meetings and drafting minutes that I then review before bringing to the commission. So I'm curious to hear how you all, as the commission tasked with approving these minutes, how you guys want to handle this. Do you want to have, a few sent out before each meeting, or would you prefer to handle larger chunks of them at once? The idea of a consent agenda has come up as a way to clear a number of these at once. But I guess all that being said, love to get to the point where we're approving the prior meeting's minutes at each regularly scheduled meeting. We just have to figure out how to best handle the backlog. So any input you have, I'd be very interested in hearing.
Mr. Dryer, I see your hand up.
Yes. My main concern is the minutes from almost 10 years ago. I don't necessarily have a problem approving minutes from last year or maybe even the year before. 10 years ago or so, I was on the commission then, and I'm not even sure I could really vote for those minutes just based on my own memory. Considering that there may be one other commission member who was on back then and everybody else has been appointed since then, I'm not sure it's appropriate to ask people to vote for that particular minutes. I'm wondering if our legal people could tell us, would it be appropriate, instead of approving minutes like that, can we vote to just accept those minutes, which is different than approving them, but at least that's an official action. I could not vote to approve the minutes from 2013.
Mr. Roberts, do you have feedback?
Madam Chair, thank you. Mr. Dryer, I know that you made that comment in a message, I think last week when Secretary Munson sent out the proposed minutes. Due to crush of work, I didn't know this was going to be brought to the commission today, but a couple things. We can only approve minutes. That's the only available or proper response according to Robert's Rules of Order, which we are under, okay? There's no such thing as, in this case, accepting minutes, I'm afraid. The only way you could issue an objection to a set of minutes is a proposal of a correction to the minutes. Otherwise, there isn't a up and down vote. Minutes are approved. They're supposed to be approved unanimously. You can abstain, I imagine. I don't know how Robert's Rules of Order exactly addresses that, because I didn't have enough time to do that research, and I'm hesitant to be, I don't know, offering legal opinion in an open meeting. The second part of the issue is, while it is, it's unusual and pretty stark to have minutes from almost a decade ago. The takeaway under Robert's Rules of Order is that members who approve minutes at a given meeting are not their presence of being at the meeting where the minutes were taken is not necessary. So if it was a meeting from last month, you weren't there, you can still participate and vote on approval of the minutes. Last month, last year, 20 years ago. It doesn't happen too often. It's not supposed to happen because you're supposed to try, as Dan mentioned, try to get to where you are introducing approval of the minutes at each subsequent meeting. So those are the two things. We can only approve, and that's it. If you had a change, or you had a correction, that's the only opportunity to make any kind of comment on the minutes. And then it is not a bar to commission members who weren't at the meetings to vote on approval of those minutes.
So
It's just unusual. It's just unusual.
Just to clarify, so you're saying that really it wouldn't be appropriate to ever vote against minutes. You would correct them instead?
Yes.
But you could abstain.
I'm leaning toward you can abstain. I think that's probably always available. But again, I hesitate because I have not actually fully vetted that by way of research or pulling the Robert's Rules of Order, which are not easy. They're not user friendly. Let's just say that. If you're concerned, and I would ask Madam Chair Trott and Secretary Musson that perhaps we could table any discussion of the minutes until a later meeting, because maybe fellow commissioners have some of the same concerns you have, just because it's a bit uncharacteristic or I don't really like saying unusual, other than it's it might have come as a surprise seeing the age of how long ago 2013 was.
Right. Well, I think we can, the only one in question is the one from 13. I think we can move on the other three, but let's continue on the conversation related to the 2013 meeting minutes or any that are aged like this one. Mr. Bridges, you had your hair. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just for a little bit, I was the one who originally typed up the 2013 minutes because those were outstanding when I first started here. And I will say that former Secretary Pettit is the one who edited them, since he was here and he was taking that from the original. So if we are the two that did those together, if that helps a little bit, that he is actually the one. He was helping me identify people that I couldn't identify because I didn't have notes. So it's his editing of what was being finally submitted to the commission. Thank you.
That's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Bridges. Mr. Trosick?
Yes, and this is to Mr. Roberts. I understood your comments to be that members who approve minutes need not necessarily have been present at the meeting that the minutes are being approved for. Is that a correct comment that I'm making?
It is right. Yeah, that's
okay.
Exactly right.
So the question I have then is, and I am not familiar with the intricacies of Robert's Rules of Order at all, but my question then is, that presumes, I would believe, and maybe this is the part of the research, that presumes that the members who are approving minutes, that they were not a part of that meeting, were members of the commission at the time that meeting was held. I guess I'm trying to make a distinction. Would it be is it or is it not? And I don't know the answer to this question. This is, I think, the question I'm asking. Is it or is it not appropriate? Is there a distinction where this group would be able to approve minutes from meetings where no one on this commission was even a member at that time? And is that different than somebody who is a member of this commission approving minutes from a meeting that they may not have attended, but they were a member of the commission at the time that meeting was held? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes. Excellent question. I'm going to say that there is not a distinction. And I say that because we're this body right here today is Cleveland Landmarks Commission. The 2013 minutes are from Cleveland Landmarks Commission. You not personally, Ray, but the membership needs to be able to trust your counterparts, whether it's when you were on the commission or prior to you ever being appointed to the commission. That's a built-in trust factor that I think Robert's Rules of Order contemplates. I would, if you did a fact pattern where you're crossing from one commission to a different commission or board, then that would never be able to take place. But it is the same commission through from 2013 to today. So whether you were on it then is not material.
Okay. A follow-up question, if I may then. Is there a mechanism by which this board can retroactively approve outstanding minutes in total? Or do each set of minutes have to be approved individually from the meetings to which they were taken?
Another excellent question. We cannot summarily approve a collection of minutes. They'd have to be individually introduced.
Okay.
By date.
Thank you.
All right.
So we couldn't do like a consent agenda, like, item where if they were submitted and we recognize all the minutes that were included, let's say from 13, that we couldn't do a consent, agenda item that could approve all of those 13. We have to introduce each one individually.
Well, Madam Chair, there is a way. What Secretary Munson did was he provided the drafts of them in advance, and the commission need not read them if they were provided to commission members in advance. So in a way, we could do a as you say, like maybe a more of a blanket approach insofar as each of these four sets, right? The 4 dates in question, we'll just introduce each one as date, and it could be something along the lines of, a motion to approve as provided in advance to each commission member by way of email.
Okay.
Yeah. But we'll need to distinguish each date, I guess. Maybe you would be doing that anyway. I apologize if that's confusing the answer.
Mr. Roberts, do I understand you then to say that potentially even today we could say that there is a motion on the floor to approve the minutes from the meetings of November 14, 2013, July 14, 2022, August 11th, 2022, December 22nd, 2022, get a second, and then all 4 of those will be approved by one motion?
Yes, I'm gonna make a executive decision, say yes. Again, I think that's proper. I don't have the letter of the law in front of me on Robert's Rules of Order. In terms of that, it's a little wonky, but for our purposes, I think that would satisfy our requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Brunges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the past, we have approved multiple minutes in one motion. So that is a standard that should probably, for consistency's sake, remain. For second, we do have, in our COVID years, we do have all of the meetings on YouTube. So if there's any questions, those can be referred to that way. As for 2013, we do have an audio tape, and anything pre-COVID, we have audio tape of. So if somebody wants to confirm previous meetings such as 2013 and wants a copy of the audio tape to compare as to what we did, we can send that out as well, just to hopefully allay any fears. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brunges. That's good to know. Mr. Dryer.
So in order to move forward, let me suggest that we do a motion for the 2022 minutes that are in front of us, and then a separate motion for the 2013 minutes. That would make me the most comfortable Only because I can't, if I want to abstain on the 2013, I can't figure out how to do it without, if it's all in one group, I don't know how to abstain on just one of the minutes. So that would be my request is to have two separate motions, I guess. And then, or the other alternative is to hold out the 2013 until Mr. Roberts could perhaps do some more research and advise us further. So that's it.
I understand. That was going to be my suggestion, and if people are uncomfortable moving forward on the 113. Giancarlo, because I believe, just to clarify, you and Giancarlo were the only two members of the current commission that were part of the review of those meetings of this particular year. Giancarlo, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I agree with, I think we should deal with the 22 meeting as one and approve them, leave the 13, or we could actually vote on the 13 and Mr. Dwyer could abstain, as he mentioned, and get this done and over with. And I wasn't a member of the committee in 2013. Is that what you're suggesting, Madam Chair?
Oh, I saw your name on the list. Sorry about that. I thought I did. Maybe I misread it.
It's that long that I've been there, but yeah, I think we should, we could vote on the 2022 and get it done as a group or individually, but as a one session, and then deal with the 13 separately. And Mr. Dwyer can abstain if that makes him feel better, and get this done.
Others, do you feel comfortable? Well, let's, do we feel comfortable moving forward with the 13 meeting minutes? Is there anyone else who feels uncomfortable moving forward with 13 minutes besides Mr. Dwyer, Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I very much appreciate the counsel of Mr. Roberts. It's helped me to understand the mechanics of this. And I want to say that I really appreciate Dan and the newer members of the staff and their diligence to complete this housekeeping process. So I think it's appropriate for us to vote. And at this point, I am very comfortable in voting and would put forth a motion separately to approve the minutes from November 14th, 2013.
Okay, well, why don't we move forward then? That I believe I can put forward this motion for approval of, we'll separate this into two, reviews to make everyone feel comfortable. The motion for approval of the meeting minutes from December 22nd, 2022, August 11th, 2022, July 14th of 2022. Do we have a second on that, Mr. Strickland?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
On this Zoom meeting right now.
All right, Mr. Musson, you want to roll and then announce the results?
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Benezzi?
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Tarasek?
Yes.
And Ms. Trott?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
All right, then I will put forward the motion to approve the November 14th, 2013 meeting minutes.
I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please call roll and announce results.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Benezzi?
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
I'll abstain, but I appreciate the chair and the commission for responding to my concern.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Tarasek?
Yes.
And Ms. Trott?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Excellent. Well, thank you for everyone. This will, I think, on the next few meetings, we'll be going through this a little bit more. And if that's what we feel is most comfortable, then we'll separate it into 2 votes, current and previous. Go ahead.
And in the meantime, staff can work with Mr. Roberts, and I guess I've thrown a lot at him since I started, so probably asked him 1,000 questions. So maybe we can work on this and sort out any of the questions that came up today that still need answered.
Excellent. Any other administrative reports?
Yes, Madam Chair, just wanted to let the commission know we have a new phone line up here. It's actually an old phone line, but the 664-2532 number is now just a general landmarks line, so people can call and their messages get forwarded to myself, Carl, and Jessica, so we can all respond, figure out who's best to respond. We also have a general email address. It's landmarks@clevelandohio.gov, so that allows us to all kind of be aware of if someone reaches out to staff, that nothing falls between the cracks. Just wanted to make the commission aware that we've also received a demolition permit application for 1094 East 99th Street, which is located in the East Boulevard Historic District. So we're going to be setting up a site visit for that in the next few weeks, and we'll email the details of that once time and date's been established. That's all.
All right, excellent. Well, we appreciate everyone working through the logistics of trying to bring the commission's records up to date. And I think that is all we have for today. So we'll adjourn today's meeting and see everyone in 2 weeks. All right, thanks everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Okay. Goodbye.